Welcome to the More Happiness, Less Suffering podcast. I'm Casey Howe, Senior Meditation and Dharma Teacher for Inside LA.
And I'm Dr. Monisha Vasa, psychiatrist. In our little podcasting studio in Orange County, California, we bring wisdom from the couch and the cushion to your real-life questions and struggles. So grab a cup of tea and join us. We're so glad you're here.
We are speaking today about working with loss, and all of us in different situations, in different periods of our life, have to be with loss, and there's many different aspects of loss, and therefore different ways to meet it and to work with it. So I'm here with Dr. Monisha Vasa, as always.
Nice to be with you all again. And today talking about loss, specifically right now, with everything that's happening in the world with COVID-19. Loss is a theme that I think is important for us to discuss, but of course it's a universal theme that we all navigate at different points in our life for different reasons.
And I think what is interesting is the different aspects of loss, and so we're going to get into that in a moment. And so we can meet it with some sense of openness and some sense of awareness. But as we do each time, we're going to begin the podcast with a poem. And this actually comes from my book, Becoming Water. And this is a poem that exhibits maybe the opposite of loss. And I think Dr. Vasa is going to read it.
Dear one, the love you feel from another is your reflection being mirrored back to you. You are love, as a mountain is a mountain. No one can give you this or take it away. If a mountain forgets, it sees its reflection in the lake below, but it has never ceased to be a mountain. You may see your reflection in another's eyes, but love you can never cease to be. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you happen to remember when you wrote that poem or what was behind it?
I actually do. It was one morning as I was looking through my Instagram feed, and somebody that I don't know, a stranger, this woman, she was very sad, and I think she had a breakup of some kind, and so she was feeling very lonely. And I wrote that to her, although I didn't send it to her because I didn't know her as a complete stranger, but I felt like we all feel like that sometimes, and we need that reminder that when we check in and we let everything go, all of our beliefs, all of our concepts, all of our ideas, all the suffering thoughts that are just coming and going, when we rest in what remains, when all of that is let us just settle, this is what's there. And you know that, as is written, nothing could take that away from us, because it's more essence-based other than contrived. There's definitely contrived love. This is usually called attachment, love with condition. And that goes for self-love too. So, looking at that poem in regards to today's topic is that the sense of loss is these things that, in a way, we've kind of added to ourselves, and then we take them away. There's this funny comic that I'm thinking of, like a comic strip. Maybe you have seen it, but it's in regards to enlightenment. And there's this guy, and he digs a ditch. He's standing on top of the ground in the beginning frame, and then he digs this ditch. Then he climbs in the ditch, and then he climbs out of the ditch, and he puts his arms up like he just achieved something great. And anyway, some of the loss that we suffer from, we've kind of added on to ourselves. And this is not to make, light of it, because loss is very real, but we do want to investigate some of the loss that comes from just internal beliefs and concepts. And these are the things that when we look at and add wisdom to them, we can really cut down on how much they cause us suffering. And there's some things, obviously, with people in our lives and whatnot that we really can't do anything about except to accept the fact that loss exists.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a good point about, there's different types of loss, yeah, and our reaction to those types of loss and how we cope with varying losses to some extent depends on the type of loss that we're dealing with, but sometimes we forget to ask ourselves some of those questions, which is, what type of loss is this, and what does it mean to me? Right now, I think in particular with the current pandemic situation, there's many types of loss that people are feeling. I think the people who are, trying to stay at home and work from home and practice social distancing, as we all need to be right now, there's a lot of loss of routine, structure, identity, social outlets, and then for patients, there's loss of health and well-being, sometimes even the loss of just basic bodily functions like the ability to breathe, just a fundamental loss. And then, for our healthcare providers, there's loss of safety, there's loss also of structured work hours and routine, just being, in these frontline situations and working extended hours and to the points of fatigue. And so everybody, I think, in a sense, is dealing with their own types of loss in this situation. And sometimes I think it can just be helpful to name it, because we might be feeling grief, over those losses, all of the emotions that can come with recognizing loss. But sometimes the very first step is even just naming or acknowledging the losses that we might be feeling. And sometimes we actually skip over that step.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the kind of umbrella loss that I see is the loss of control. So we're trying to control. There's so much in our lives routinely that we feel is in control. Like we wake up and we eat our breakfast that, if we want to eat the same cereal every day and the same type of milk every day, we can. And then if you're a coffee drinker or something, you might go get your same coffee, and then you could always depend upon your commute to be something, whether it's good or bad. And there's a sense of control. And then when everything goes sideways, there's this loss of control. And so I think one of the antidotes to this, like you mentioned, is just naming it and naming, this is a sense of, this is a loss of control, which is part of day-to-day existence. We all get agitated when we want something and it doesn't go our way, especially when it's progress oriented. One of the fastest way to frustration is when we're trying to make progress. It could be walking from your kitchen sink to your trash can and your partner gets in your way or something. Whenever progress is halted, then frustration arises when we have somewhere to go, something to do, some idea in our mind that we want this sense of progress to happen. And then when that gets stumped, there's frustration, and it's part of not being able to control everything to make that progress happen. Mm-hmm. And with this pandemic, then there's a sense of even progress itself, even being able to control that I want to proceed in a certain way. Dr. Voss and I were talking about this morning, about this energy of slowing down is something that some people are having to deal with. And that is something that we're not accustomed to. Like success and whatnot it looks a certain way, which is usually progress oriented. It's usually addition oriented. It's like, I'm going to add this to my life. I'm going to do this. I'm going to achieve this, and therefore feel a sense of contentment. And we're being asked to move that meter, if you will, that points to success looks like this, and it might not anymore. At least for now, it might look something different just today, not anymore, but just today. What's it look like? And to be able to pivot and shift our idea of what that's going to look like. What's success today going to look like? What's contentment today going to look like?
Yeah, I was noticing, just as you said, a lot of frustration, I think, because I was trying to apply the same parameters of, in a very, very different time, like those same expectations of, wanting to move certain things forward on, projects or goals or whatnot on a certain timeline. And now, as you said, we're in this energy of slowing down, of turning inward, of being at home. And so, it's just not possible. And so I think the struggle, or the internal struggle, is, do you continue to say, well, this is the new normal and I'm just going to push forward and, figure out new ways and pivot and keep going at the same pace? Or do we sort of say, well, maybe this is a time that we need to shift our expectations, and we actually need to take a step back, and we need to slow down, and we need to relax our energy a little bit. And it's hard to know. I also know that sometimes, there can be a lot of other associated feelings, like I'm struggling with staying home, I'm struggling with slowing down, I'm struggling with the loss of those routines and outlets, that we talked about. And I feel a bit of guilt because my colleagues who are healthcare providers, who are, in the hospitals and working, with their own safety and health in jeopardy, it's like there's this part of me that's like, well, this is the least I can do. It's like I feel guilty for even feeling like this is a burden when people are out there either sick or trying to care for those who are sick. And so just all the layers of that, sometimes can provide some perspective, but we just have to make sure also not to kind of get harsh with the reality of our own emotional experience.
Yeah, and on a very core level, it's how are we dealing with big change? And I've said before, this notion of impermanence is one of the things that we love to ignore on a moment-to-moment basis. Like I mentioned before, we wake up and we think we're eating the same cereal with the same milk and we're driving the same commute. But actually those things, even though you do the same things every day, they're different. The people that brought you that cereal were all different. Maybe the truck was different and the materials were a little bit different and the milk was a little bit different and the commute was, of course, different. There's different people on the roads and whatnot. And we're dealing with these small changes, but being unaware of them, we actually don't notice it. And then when big change comes, we're knocked off the seat of our awareness, and we move into more catastrophizing. So I think part of the antidote here is to recognize that we've been through so much change and we're okay. Whoever you are, whatever your life has looked like, you've gone through so much change, and it might not even look that way, but we're dealing with it every single moment. The only thing that's like fully present in each and every day of our lives is impermanence. It's change. Everything's changing, literally every single moment, and we do fine, really. And so trying to come back home to that, like, I'm okay, things are changing, but we have to look inward to find that sense of stability. The way we look at change can be steadfast, can be calming, can be more permanent, can feel a sense of solid ground. And again, your awareness, this observer, that which is looking at, all those things are coming and going, and you're still here. Your thoughts, all of your thoughts you've ever had have come and gone. You're still here. Beliefs, concepts, events, situations, people, you're still here. You're right here. Things are always going to move and change and shift. You're still here. And so looking at it with that lens, there's a lot of loss. But again, going back to what I originally said, some of the loss is a title. Someone might lose their job and lose a title. There's a sense of loss, but it's somewhat fabricated, and routine, somewhat fabricated, right? That's actually not you. You're not your routine. You're not your labels. You're not your job, right? Those things can shift and change, and if you allow that to shift and change, you're still okay.
Yeah, I think our initial reaction when we hear that things are changing is it's almost one of aversion, like we feel fear or we feel anxiety around this notion that something is going to change. And yet I always have to remind myself that there's also a lot of hope in change, that things, also positive things happen as a result of change. And the reality is that when things shift, we actually don't know, so sometimes I think trying to create a space of curiosity or don't know mind around a change that's unfolding can be helpful. I know this past weekend, for example, I was feeling a bit like, all the normal things that we do on the weekend, we're not going to be able to do, and kind of feeling some sense of sadness around that. And then different things arose that we did, which were positive in their own ways and, allowed for other types of connection. We did laundry together and cleaned together and baked together. And that was its own form of a positive experience and a positive memory. So it's like, I think if we can at least create a little bit of space of the possibility of allowing what we don't know to just arise as it will arise, that can sometimes support us in moving through those feelings.
So, per our usual, we're going to end with a meditation. And if you're in a place to join us, we would love that. So just giving you a few moments to find your meditative posture. And again, if you're driving or whatnot, you can still listen to the meditation, just allowing these words to move through your awareness. So turning on the light switch of awareness itself, the part of you that knows you're alive, you're breathing, you're here, wherever that might be in this moment. And just notice change, notice thoughts arising, falling away. Notice sounds coming and going. Noticing sensations doing the same. In a way, each moment is a loss and a rebirth. Letting everything in, letting everything out, and taking a step back every few moments, making sure you're resting in this neutral observer seat. of your beingness and taking refuge here, experiencing how stable awareness is when you check in, how everything is floating in and out of awareness. But awareness is like solid ground. You can rely on it. Letting be whatever you find, leaving it be as it is, no need to enhance it, follow it. Or push it away. Everything is coming and going all on its own. And wishing that all beings everywhere can find the peace of this perspective, being at ease in body and mind, heart. May all beings everywhere, without exception, may they all be happy and free from suffering.